With PRB02 in full swing, there were a lot of single cards, especially the unique ones, that were a super high price at a time. You know, Marco hitting about $45, a Kobe Rare hitting $15. And although prices have definitely calmed down a bit, there are many players, including myself, that only really want to play decks that don't include any PRB02 cards. Whether you're trying to save money or just not trying to buy any right now, this video is going to have a ton of deck lists that don't use any of those cards at all. I've got a double-digit amount set for you, and they're really fun and cool. Anyways, before we get into the video, if you like it, please make sure to subscribe to help us get to 20,000 subscribers, which is insane. And because I need to pay rent this upcoming month, let's hear from word from our sponsor. Listen, if you're itching for a brand new playmat, now is the time to check out Nengarden, the sponsor of this video. Not only do they have brand new pre-orders up on their website for Chaos Crew, Green Fury, and the Absolute Ruler designs, which by the way, are phenomenal. But if you're a little indecisive or want a little bit of mystery in your life, check out their new promotion this month only for the Halloween Mystery Playmat sale. You not only get a random playmat at a discounted price, but on top of that, you get a free 10-card sleeve set alongside your order in this promotion. Plus, if you want a ton of other great accessories that aren't just playmats, they've got the King of Hearts t-shirt, matching pin, other pins alongside of it through the whole cake island, and even stickers. Make sure with whatever you want in Nengarden, use my code Atrocious for 8% off. The link to their website is in the description below. Thank you so much for Nengarden for sponsoring the video, and let's get back to that video. The first one that we're going to talk about is the one that I've been most obsessed with, Zoro Sanji. Now, this is actually the exact 50 that you've probably known about for a little bit, right? It got second place in the Zagreb Regionals with Luka Forjan, but just this past weekend, this exact 50 actually made top 32 in another regional. Hervoy piloted it to the top cut of the Milan Regionals, and there was another Zoro Sanji list that was one card different and played a Lord of the Coast that made it into the top 32 of the PPG Regional. Basically, if you don't know this deck, you're an aggro deck being able to play out these 4-cost characters, right, like Cavendish and Arlong, or maybe this Zoro, and swinging multiple times, right, using Zoro Sanji's leader effect to be able to pick up some of your 2 costs and above that you're going to play out onto the field. You draw a ton of cards, right, with Vivi and Cavendish, and in my opinion, it's a super fun deck in the format if you're willing to put in the work to know the technical side, right, and the correct sequencing of things. If you're interested in this deck list and want to see it in action for yourself, I'm going to be streaming Wednesday this week at 3:30 p.m. Pacific time, where you can tune in, maybe learn, ask some questions as I prep for the LA Regionals this upcoming weekend. But going into the top of the order, we have Enel. So Enel, this is actually JCEM's top 8 deck list from the recent PPG Online Regional that I talked about earlier, you know, with the Zoro Sanji. Especially with the addition of Kuma coming in OP12, this deck has a lot of gas and a lot of different options on how you can build it. Your slew of big bodies on the field outside of Kuma, the 8-cost Katakuri, a great card to remove something off your opponent's field in a starve method, or gain a life yourself. Eustace Captain Kidd, right? A really good body that we're starting to see more and more just as a generically good yellow card in decks. Being able to burn a life, but also hand filter in the late game. You've got Slam Dunk Enel, right? Just being able to be a 12,000 power swing. So good. And Ace, another 10,000 power swing that can swing on the turn that it's played with the rush. This deck not playing Yamato at all I found was very interesting because I think most Enels up to this point have played Yamato just since the inception of Enel as a deck in OP05, and also including a card like Arc Maxim. There are 2 specific situations that I think this card is used for. One, it's for the Rayleigh matchup, right? This does really well into Rayleigh, just all their small 1-cost and 2-cost bodies to be able to remove them at the same time at the cost of resting your leader, which is typically fine when you're swinging with like bigger bodies in the turn anyways. But on top of that, I think that this is a really good card for different chum blockers, right? Different chum blockers, different searchers, right? That maybe in comparison to Rayleigh aren't swinging as much, but are lethal threats. This list also playing the Kiku Nojo. I know this is a card that is very on and off in a lot of different Enel decks over the course of time. Some people like playing and some people don't, but especially with the Nami, right, being such such a good removal card. It's a really good trigger and also flows well with the Katakuri, right? Being able to put this back in life to be able to play out again in the coming turn, and just have a sticky body on the field that can potentially give you a little bit of healing. Damned Punk is also really nice, this electromagnetic cannon, right? Being able to help starve your opponent by looking at their life and placing it at the top or bottom, especially if it's a useful card or a card that you want to burn later with Eustace Captain Kidd. And just good removal in general. I think 5 cost removal is pretty good right now within this format in PRB02 before we move into OP13. So this is a pretty nice one to play. We've also got another yellow deck, or partially yellow deck, in Green Yellow Law. So this is the second place list from the Lyon Regional, I think is how you pronounce it. And before you say anything, I do know that there is a PRB02 card in here with a 1 copy of the Roar Zoro, but I still want to show it because, one, I love Green Yellow Law, but also if you do not want to get this card, there are still several options that you can play in this deck, including a 4th copy of the Trafalgar Law blocker, Stun Bunny, which used to be a pretty good card within this deck, especially in the like OP11 era, or some different blockers like Capone Beige, right? A really good protection effect, or Bonnie to help you more consistently get your leader effect off. This deck loves playing around with ratios, and it's one of my favorite decks to play. I just happen to sell all of my Cavendishes before the release of PRB02, so I don't have any right now, can't play this deck. But if you've got the pieces, it's a really cool combo set to be able to try and pilot. Very similar in a lot of senses to Zoro Sanji, I feel like a lot of times. Not exactly, and they're very different. But now, once again, another yellow deck. We've got Kalgara. So Kalgara actually made a couple different appearances within the top 32 of the different regionals this past weekend. I believe this is the one from PPG, and a lot of it is pretty much the same, right? You have your Sky Island core, because a lot of your pieces are Sky Island. Being able to find this Kalgara from OP12, an incredible card. Kuma, just literally one of the best yellow cards, I think, right now in the game. Once you find your Mont Blanc Norlands, though, you've got a couple different options as well within this list, including a Rush Ace, especially because Kalgara is such an aggressive deck, right? Being able to self-inflict damage to be able to cheat out one of these different characters like Kalgara or Kalgara. This ace, a lot of times on that on play, does have that 7,000 power rush, which can apply a lot of different pressure. We've also got here Eustace Captain Kidd. Now, I know this card is included in PRB02, but it was actually a promo before that, and its reprinting in PRB02 really tanked the price of this card, so it is much, much more affordable in my opinion. But in this deck, once again, you're rocking the Supernova package, right? Searching out for these different options to be able to have on the field or in play, along with Kuma, just a generically good card yet again. El Thor, which I thought was really interesting of an addition, right? Especially because of a 1 cost 4,000 power ad. There's a lot of potential to be able to get out of a lot of different swings, whether that swing is coming at you or maybe is coming at one of your characters, right? If you make this X-Drake a blocker, for example, you can go ahead and counter out El Thor and get out of a 6k swing, keeping this X-Drake alive. I don't know if that's exactly the value, but I hope you see the point in that you can go ahead, block with Trafalgar Law, and then plus 4,000 to go up to 13 just right then and there is so nice. Another list running the Gum Gum Redhawks, right, has a lot of potential for not only removal of 5 costs or less, because like I said, 5 cost removal is very nice in this game, but being able to also be a counter event gives you 5 different counter events to be able to utilize in this deck, along with Blaze Slice. And Kiku Nojo, what can I say, is just a good body. You get this off trigger or just naturally play it on the field. It's a sticky body that your opponent really has to play around or maybe just outright get rid of in order for you to be able to be in a worse position within the game, which can give you a life, which is so nice. We've also got Kuzan here. Now, Kuzan's been a little bit quiet in the last couple weeks, in my opinion, but I still think that this is a fantastic deck to play. You get to draw so much cards. It's rare that this deck actually ever bricks, and a lot of times too, once you get this Garp, Sakazuki, or Kuzan or Aramaki combo off, you're going to be able to win games just by outright spamming the board and overwhelming your opponent. You've got a good mix of removal in this deck with Gravity Blade, Red Rock, and Jozu, right? As well as maybe getting rid of some other ones with Arumaki. But you've got a sticky body of your own in Borsalino, right? This card definitely been a staple, and especially some kind of counterplay to a lot of the Gum Gum Giant decks that are running around in GP, blue, purple, or just really any that has any sort of counter events, right? We can talk about green decks with Dead Man's Game, or any of the yellow decks that we just saw with El Thor, Gum Gum Red Hawk. A lot of times this 2K is so punishing, and being able to so easily be found off Sengoku or Toshigi or anything like that really makes me love this card in a lot of different situations. Kuzan's one of the few decks that I actually have built at all times, right, since its release in OP12. I just love drawing cards, and Kuzan just being one of the best decks to draw cards in general. We've also got Lim. So Lim's been a bit up and down, I feel like, in certain situations, and I feel like especially in this format, right, and heading into OP13, it wouldn't surprise me if the Europeans just do an absolutely bonkers performance with Lim once again. Lim being able to ramp just simply by resting 3 Dawn and playing out a 5-cost character. If you do not know, your deck revolves around Odyssey 5-cost characters. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different ones that you can play, and on top of that you can play other options like the Lim to be able to search, right? The Adio, even if you're in a pinch and you really need to play this. One of the cards that I also really enjoy in this deck, although unsearchable, is Baby 5, right? A lot of times with the Lim deck, you're tapping out pretty much all of your Dawn, so sometimes counter events or leaving Dawn open is difficult. The Baby 5 allows you to be able to, at the end of your turn, after you've tapped out all your Dawn, set up 2 as active to be able to play Hell's Judgment, right, in the Zoro matchup. Very, very good. Dead Man's Game, right, as a little bit of counter event, or Blast Breath, one of the more popular counter events I feel like in Lim. This deck gets rolling when it is playing out all of its bodies. A little bit of removal as well, right? 5-cost removal once again with Sakazuki, and getting all these different extra effects are so easy when you have to play in characters as rested. The 1-cost Lim, super important in this deck, right? Being able to restand one of these different Odyssey characters to be able to say, okay, I play this in as rested, I'm just going to restand it at the end of turn. Now, let's talk about Pluffy in OP05. I actually think Pluffy is getting better in OP13 in terms of a position in the meta as well. So if you want to try it out, you want to start building it and seeing what it's about, now is a pretty good time. A trend that I've seen in a lot of Pluffy lists as of late is the addition, or the reintroduction, I should say, of Lead Performer Disaster, right? Just a consistent way, especially on turn 2, of getting that ramp, right, alongside Bon Clay. You're more often than not going to hit that mark. Plus Lead Performer as well, really nice trigger, and on top of that is a card that replaces itself in the hand in comparison to Bon Clay, where you don't replace it in the hand. You can even double ramp on turn 3 with stuff like Lead Performer and Zorojuro, or Zorojuro Bon Clay. Even, I guess, Miss Doublefinger, you have some addition to ramp as well if you want to do that. But as a deck that can play both Katakuri and Lin Lin, this deck still has a place in its meta, being able to Gum Gum Giant and have a variety of different events that it can utilize, like Slow Beam, Hell's Judgment, and Blast Breath, right? Especially with Rosenante being able to cycle for more card draw and things of that nature. There's a couple other options that you can utilize in this deck as well. Like in OP13, Magellan becoming a very instrumental part of the deck is something that you can even include now, right? Being able to knock your opponents off curve is never a bad opportunity, especially when 5 costs, as I've mentioned so far in this video, get popped often and is a really nice threshold to be able to KO characters with effects. You could throw this guy in instead of maybe something like Queen, to where if they do want to KO it, all right, they're going backwards an entire turn of Dawn. It's an incredibly sticky body, and especially because you don't have searches in this deck, right? Not playing the new PRB02 Nami searcher. It's a really cool option, and you can play around with a lot of different things within this deck, like I was talking about with the Doflamingo Rosenante package. Now, Rayu, being one of my favorite decks of all time in the One Piece trading card game, didn't get any additions in PRB02, but got its additions in OP11, right, with this new Rayu right here, with this Ichiji, and I've even seen some people, although not in this list, utilize this Rayu from OP12. Being able to be a hyper aggro deck at times that can reconserve resources with the amount of draw with Rayu's leader effect, with the Rayu right here, and also search options with Tony Chopper, and filter effects with the stage to find your different pieces. There's a lot of cool stuff about this deck and the way that you can play around with a lot of the key pieces, right? Being able with Ichiji to become the rush guy, which is one of the more important cards in the deck, I feel like, or the blocker guy, right? To be pretty much an 8,000 power blocker, or just having another search option that can end up milling your deck to be able to put some of these other key pieces in the trash. This is a list from the Seville Regionals, right, that got top 32 in that event, and if I was going to play this deck, this is about where I would put it. Now, Trafalgar Law is everybody's cope deck in every single format, especially when new cards get introduced. Did get some new good stuff in OP12 that you can utilize, like the Perona Slash, right? The starter deck recently from Bonnie of the Supernova. You got the blocker in OP12, and the addition of Dead Man's Game. This is specifically Luis Trincado's list from the Chinos Cup. Hopefully I pronounced your name correctly. And I really like the idea of this, right? Being able to shamble so many different characters. You have so much searchers in this deck, right? The Bonnie, the Perona, the Nami, even a couple copies of Curly de Don. To be able to find your specific pieces, right? A lot of the Supernova stuff is slash type characters, which are key pieces that Perona loves to utilize, especially with your Rush Zoro, right? Your Brook, a searchable 2K now off of Perona. A deck that used to hold high and true to be the top deck in the early stages of the game in the first couple sets has definitely been power corrupt and fallen by the wayside compared to now. It's still a lot of deck that I know a lot of people have fun with. There are some cheap options within this deck, especially if you've had these cards for a while. There's not much to add into it if you've been playing and coping with it. And a deck that, in my opinion, is very pilot heavy, right? It's very much one of those decks that if you make one mistake as a pilot, you're toast, you're cooked. But with a high level of skill expression, it is so satisfying to play and get your combos off. I'll talk about Rosenante as well, as someone who has been talking a lot in the last month or so about blue-green Rosenante. This is not my list that I've been playing with. This is Broken Ball's list from the Chinos Cup as well. I didn't want to just show you the list that I've been showing you a lot. I wanted to show you a more unique list. He ended up piloting this deck to a top 4 finish in the 84th Chinos Cup, utilizing a lot of different pieces that we've talked about, right? The 5-drop blocker Nami, a great card in this deck, being able to filter your hand, being able to find some key pieces in some different stages of the game. You've also got Duval, right? Duval, a great card to be able to set up your turn, right? Especially like going second. It's really nice to play this down to make sure you have stuff like Cavendish or Mihawk, right, on your next draw for turn. And you can even play this off Ivankov if you want to, if you set it up there earlier in the game with something like Nami, or just another target to be able to play off Eustace Captain Kidd. And on top of that, a couple copies, 3 copies, which I think is pretty good amount. I think that's the amount that I ran in the Dallas LCQ of Sabo, right? The only way to get that blanket protection on everything 7 cost or less, regardless of color. Rosenante, one of my favorite decks in the One Piece trading card game, and something that I'm definitely going to revisit once we get into OP13, taking a little break from it now, playing some other decks. But if you want to continue on this deck in the PRB02 format, this is a really good place to start, in my opinion. And the final deck that we'll talk about is UP. Why not? This is Jonas Abraham's list that won the online PPG regional, so it is a guaranteed very good deck, right? Especially in this format. And if you were already rocking with UP, you're in a great position, right? There's no secret about that. No Doflamingo in this list, just a heavy count of Rosenante, right? Being able to filter out these different events that you may not need, especially in the late game with God Thread and draw some different cards, right, that you may want to utilize. 2 copies of 9 Rush Luffy. I know this is a card that some people include, some people don't. And also 2 cards of the 8 cost Rush Luffy, right? Very good to be able to get a little bit of removal, right? Especially because 4 cost characters, as you've seen through the different deck lists that I've shown, do have a very solid impact within the meta right now, especially when you do look at some PRB enhanced decks like Smoker. If you're a fan of running with what you consider to be the BDIF, I really think UP's up there. Not really a secret there. It's a great deck if you want to pilot one of the best ones. And I mean, there's a reason why Jonas Abraham decided to run with it, right? Because it is pretty much possibly the best deck. And that's going to be all. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And honestly, there are more decks than that, right? I know I didn't showcase like Rayleigh or something in this video. But if I were to include every single deck, I mean, we'd be here a long time. If you're heading off to the LA Regionals later this weekend in the offline event, I will be there competing in the event and also hanging around doing some side events potentially if I scrub out. I hope I don't scrub out, but so if you see me there, make sure to say hello. I'd love to talk to you. I'd love to get you to sign a card for the wall, which by the way, I got to get all the other cards that I need to put on the wall. Again, thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed this video and let me know some decks that you want to know about later in the comments.